Welcome to another episode of WoTTalk. This is the 13th episode, and this is the first time there is someone else here with me. My dad has actually started the series and is officially on book 3. This episode will contain spoilers up until book 3, maybe pushing into book 4 a little bit, depending on how far we go, because he has officially started the 4th book. I'm incredibly happy to say that he has started the series, largely due to me badgering him for a decade and a half about it. So we'll go ahead and jump right in. Say hey, Dad.
Hi, and I'm glad I've started it. It's something that I wouldn't say you've been badgering me about, but I've known as an important part of your life for a long, long time. The 14 tomes, these are not short books, were certainly intimidating, but I've got some time now, so I figured I'd at least give the first book or two a shot, and as I guess so many people do, I quickly got hooked. And I have, gone through large histories and series of books before, so I'm enjoying it very much. It's what I do whenever I'm doing something mundane. I'm listening to the audiobooks. I'm not reading the physical books. And so far I've been enjoying it very, very much. And now that I know you're even doing these booktube videos and that sort of stuff, I just couldn't not see how I like it. And so far, halfway through book 4, I like it a lot.
And you like me, started with the audiobooks. You're starting with the audiobooks. You said the hardest thing so far, though, is you don't have a map.
Well, the hardest thing by far is keeping track of all the names, especially in the first book or two. I don't think my brain's quite as agile as it used to be. And dear Lord, especially in the beginning, you can't tell which names are going to matter and which ones aren't. And even yesterday, I think there was a time when Moraine just listed like 5 names, bang, 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 bang. And I'm okay, forget those. What was she trying to communicate? A map would certainly help. And I remember when I was living in Arizona and you spent a long time out there doing this wonderfully detailed map of that world. And I wish I had that to guide me. But you've sent me a couple of others that I think are going to help me figure all this out as well. So yes, I need a map, but not as much as I need a character diagram.
Yeah, I've said this to you. I think I've said it on my channel before. First read through, just focus on the main 15 characters and what happens to them event-wise. And maybe if you ever do a second read, then start focusing on more side stuff. Try to get the whole grasp of the world. Because I didn't get the full context of everything until probably my 3rd time through. And I know it still baffles you that I've done this series as many times as I have.
Yeah, well, no, that doesn't work. And so now we're going to go into one of our debates. You don't know when you meet a character whether they're going to be important or not. Should I remember that Egwene is somebody important? Nah, she's just one of these multiple females that are all wandering around in the first book. I won't focus on her. Oh, was that Egwene or was that Elaine? I've heard that name before, I think. Who is she? And it's not until you're a couple books in that, okay, this is a major character. Now, I should know back in book 1 that this is one of the names I need to remember. You don't know that when you first encounter them.
That's fair. On my first read through, I made the assumption, okay, everyone I meet in this village is important. And there were a couple, and I need to really keep track of them. And there were a couple characters who I definitely tracked unnecessarily because of that. But yeah, I guess if you come with the mentality of, okay, these people might die, maybe they're not that important, yeah, you could certainly miss out on some of the dynamics. But I think especially Egwene I thought was important because I just assumed, oh, her and Rand have a crush thing. She's going to be important. Her and Rand have this relationship.
Yeah, and there's his dad. His dad's got to be important because he's all over the first 50 pages and then you never hear of him again for the next 4 books. Well, you hear of him, but you don't see him anymore. But now they're on their way back to the rivers and, but we're going to see him again there. I'm all excited about that.
That's book 4 so far, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I need to be really careful about what I say because I don't want to hit on spoilers for anything, for you especially, for everyone who's listening.
And I just did a spoiler. I'm sorry, but somebody is headed back to the 2 Rivers at some point, and maybe his dad will be there.
Well, no, you're fine. We said at the beginning this is up to book 4 at some point.
Okay.
And most people who listen or finish the series at least once, maybe more. But yeah, one of the things I want to get back to, the reason I mentioned the map, is a lot of people find just the amount of information provided in this series to be hugely intimidating. And that's the thing with modern fantasy, especially. There are these epics being crafted. We've seen it with Game of Thrones is at 8 books. Each one has as much detailed world building as Wheel of Time. I think it's at 8. No, I'm off. It's at some number. Stormlight Archive is projected to have 10 books, each in the same range of just massive size. I don't know of any classic fantasy series that come near to this scope of volume. Am I misled in thinking that having this large a project is a new fantasy trend?
Well, I'm nowhere near as into fantasy as you are. I'm a sci-fi guy, but I certainly found when I picked up The Lord of the Rings for the first time and put it down, because I felt like I was reading the Old Testament again, with all the begats, and this hobbit's related to that hobbit's related to this hobbit, and none of it mattered. So I put that down and figured I've got more important things to do than deal with this. But then, having read through The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings a couple times, it's a pretty complex world. You get to Silmarillion, and man, there's some real backstory going on in there. So I think there's some classic fantasy. I mean, the old pulp fiction stuff. How many Tarzan books were there? How many John Carter? There were 12 John Carter books.
But each one of those is maybe 100 pages.
Yeah,
like you could bang them out in an afternoon. Right. Yeah,
but you don't have to memorize the names of all the Martians. You need to kind of figure out which of the Martian animals are which kind of. But yeah, this is unusual in scope, I'd say. Maybe the most complicated thing I've ever read. But I think that things like Tolkien weren't wholly dissimilar.
Okay, yeah. So they had their roots. They're just kind of growing in size from them. You'll probably be shocked to hear there is one series I've encountered that puts Wheel of Time to shame in terms of just scope, and it's called Malazan Book of the Fallen, and I wasn't even planning on doing a review when I first picked it up, and even just reading it normally, I had to start taking notes, because it was just absurd, the level of world that was going on, and it proved to me there's a limit, because I do like Malazan, I think it's great, but there's a point where it went from an enjoyable feature of the series to, oh boy, and I'm worried you're at that point with Wheel of Time where it's almost feeling like tedious. The world's
no.
Right.
Well, I don't think of this as character, this is world building, this is whatever. I'm just reading it and enjoying it and going with the flow. I'm not doing any kind of criticism as I go through it. I'm just really enjoying it. And there were, which city is this, and how far is it from where, and which river, and okay, so who's this guy's? This is which race are these people, and what do they look like? And I don't have a clue what anybody looks like, because I'm just doing the audio books. So there's a little bit of that, but it's not a big deal. I'm enjoying it. I'm going with the flow. I'm having a good time.
Okay. Now you brought up race. I find my opinion on Wheel of Time in terms of culture, there's a lot of diversity, but in terms of like different races besides humans, the only ones I can think of are either evil or they're what loyal is, Ogier. Like, there's not a whole lot of elves, dwarves, like, there's not this orcs, there's not so many where it's, 30-some races in this world. It seems to be either evil, human, or Ogier.
Well, maybe they're not races then, but, so the Aiel, is that a race?
It depends. If you're talking about, like, how people in our world talk about race, yeah, they're a race in the sense that they don't look like the Wheel of Time people, but that's just like, that's the issue with, if you refer to a dwarf in a fantasy book, do you mean a dwarf or do you mean Gimli? You know what I mean? There's that problem. I would find the Aiel, yeah, if you wanted to find it that way, I'd say they're a race, but I mean in terms of like separate...
I didn't even mean that. I thought that they might be something as different as an elf or a dwarf or something, because I haven't heard of them interbreeding with anybody or anything like that. So the women on the ships that can channel, I can tell, okay, those are humans with just a whole different culture and skill set and that sort of stuff, but people like the Aiel, there are certain classes of humans, I guess, that I'm working to keep straight. Interesting,
yeah. Well, when it comes to the typical mainland people, like Borderlanders, Karian, and Andor, those are just nations. It's the same thing as Gondor versus Rohan.
Right.
I probably pronounced Rohan wrong, and 20 people are going to comment about that. It's Rohirrim, but I'm just coming back to the more basic questions in terms of character. We were talking earlier, and you said Rand so far is at the top of your list, correct?
Well, I hate being asked to pick favorites. I mean, looking at top 10 listed stuff are fun, but there's never an apples to apples comparison in anything like this. I mean, I think that Perrin's skill set is incredibly interesting. I think that Loyal is just wonderfully... I look forward to every time he's mentioned, oh, good, we're going to talk about Loyal for a while, because I think he's really fun. Tom's backstory and where I now can see Tom is headed is going to be really interesting. So I picked a favorite because I was forced to pick a favorite, but I really don't have one. Sometimes I'm in the mood to hear Nynaeve bitching at people. And that's fun when she does that in the right circumstance. But in a weak moment, I went ahead and said, okay, who's my favorite? Rand. He's got the most interesting story going on at this point, but I love them all.
You and I both have an affinity for Nynaeve. I think from the very beginning, she has this paternal thing. Everyone who leaves the Two Rivers, she wants to take care of them, and it's something that sticks with her, and I like that aspect.
That's cool, but I like the snarky.
Robert Jordan writes some snarky women, that's true. Now, you mentioned Tom, and everyone on my channel is aware, and I'm sure you're aware as well, one of my favorite characters, and I'm very curious what you thought of his arc so far, having him come back and be in a rather dark place, especially for the context of Wheel of Time. He's probably in the darkest mindset of pretty much any of the main good guys.
Well, at this point, halfway through Book 4, he's in kind of a good place because he and Elaine are on this ship together, and he knows things that she doesn't know, and she's figuring out, and that's kind of cool. His whole Gleeman attitude, I thought was fun and light, and now that I understand that he understands the game of houses so well and plays that so well, I think he enjoys that too, because he's got this kind of whole Machiavellian attitude going on, and that's fun about him. I was disappointed when Moraine just put her hand on his knee and made him feel better, but couldn't heal it because it was too late. Oh, come on, you can fix that. You fixed Mac. Come on. But he's a wonderful character, and he's complex, and he's evolving, and I'm enjoying him a lot.
Yeah, there's hard limits for the magic system. Older wounds seem to be something they struggle with.
Rand's thing in his side.
Well, there's a whole other level to that. It was caused by
it's evil.
Well, I can't get into that too deep. Yeah, it's a whole issue. He has that wound. Now, speaking of the magic system, how is it comparing to some of the more, I know again you're more sci-fi than not, but compared to other fantasy series you read, do you enjoy channeling how the difference between men and women, the insanity aspect of it? Do you find it pretty original, pretty neat?
Well, many decades ago, I spent a lot of time playing advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Mm-hmm. And certainly the magic system in D&D is way more complicated than any one book I've ever read, because it's pretty much the Lord of the Rings magic plus Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser, that whole series from Fritz Leiber, and some other things that don't immediately come to mind. So I got comfortable with all the potions and magic and different kinds of magic users and their limitations in AD&D. So this doesn't approach that. This is fairly simple in terms compared to, I think, even maybe Lord of the Rings, because of the things that the elves could do and what Galadriel. Anyway, I like it. It's different manifestations with different kinds of people and limitations here and there, and watching people, oh my God, I just did that and I have no idea what I just did. That's kind of cool as people try to figure out what their powers are and what the limits of their powers are and how to control those powers. Most of the other books that I've read, things like the Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser, which I just love and I pushed you to read for more than a decade.
It's on my list.
It's just kind of pushed out there. Here's what it is, and this guy does that. I like that in this, it's more nuanced in terms of, well, she's not quite that far yet, and well, the weaving of the woman that was navigating the ship is something that Elaine is saying, oh my gosh, I had no idea you could do something like that. Teach me. That's fun.
Yeah.
So I like the magic system so far.
It's a simple concept that's executed with a lot of depth in terms of
nuance.
Yeah. And how it builds with the world.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that struck me the first time I read it, and every time I've reread, I found it to be true. Ever since you're first introduced to the magic system, there's this feeling of danger about it that I don't feel like a lot of magic systems have. There's this feeling of you need to be so careful. You need to be taught in the White Tower. Learning on your own is dangerous. Of course, the whole male aspect of it, of they go insane, they kill everyone. They're horrible to be around because there's so much danger there. And I found that to be a very original thing for Robert Jordan to do, because I personally had not encountered a magic system yet the first thing you learn about it is caution, is danger, and everyone who can use it is just so respected and has this aura of they are so highly above everyone else.
Well, that aura, I think, is to some extent in the Harry Potter books, which of course came after these, but potions could get you in trouble if you weren't careful and used them correctly, and other spells, you could...
Harry Potter has a great, very soft magic system, yeah.
which can be scary and misused, and you have to get the soul. But again, that came later. I can't think of certainly anything that preceded these books that have that.
Yeah, I mean, there's dark magic in things like Lord of the Rings, which are, spoken against, but it almost feels like everything in Wheel of Time has the same level of ominousness, that's not right word, to it, that even the good guys using this magic has. And it's, I don't know, I think it lends to a lot of character development when you see how people who can channel, who start channeling, treat it. Like Nynaeve is pretty bold when she starts doing things. Elaine's a little more hesitant, stuff like that. Elaine is just one of my things I like about her character the most. She's all about, I want to learn, I want to know more. She's very knowledge craving, which I respect about her quite a bit.
Today I was riding my bike, and once I got into some really remote parts of the farm country out here in Tennessee, I put in my headphones and listened to the book a little bit. I'm usually more careful than that. But
you will get a comment telling you to not have headphones on.
There was a novice out in the field doing some weeding, and she used a tiny little zap of magic to kill some weeds, and she thought that was kind of cool. But then within 5 pages, she was dead. So come up and there. She hope she learned her lesson. She won't do that again.
Well, according to the pattern, she'll be weaved in again, whatever, yada, yada.
Yeah. The wheel does, yeah.
There's a philosophy behind this whole book of literally the realities of fabric, which is pretty...
multiple realities.
Multiple reality. It buys into the whole multiple universe idea.
Oh, that's one of the things that struck me first, is the whole thing coming out of quantum physics now with parallel universes. That's just all through this. And this predated it by 20 years, so that's kind of cool.
Robert Jordan apparently knew about that way back in the day. And yeah, in book 2, you get to jump into one of those worlds. You, with Rand, Huron, and Loyal. And that to me was the moment in the event that made me realize there's more to this series than just the typical fantasy I'd read to that point. Granted, at that point I had read like Redwall, a little bit of Harry Potter, nothing that's this epic high fantasy scope. And I just want to know, like, what was your, once you did jump into these other worlds, was that kind of maybe, I've heard some people refer to as kind of jumping the shark. They think it's too far for this, now there's just infinite possibilities, infinite realities. Did you have that kind of knee-jerk no, or did you just kind of like this, there's literally every decision makes a split kind of philosophy?
Well, I thought it was kind of cool because I read a lot about physics, astrophysics, quantum physics, that kind of thing, and that parallel to today's thoughts about parallel universes and string theory I thought was just kind of funny. Mm-hmm. And in a good way, in a very good way. But no, I didn't think at all jump the shark because the books don't focus on that. It's a backdrop to a lot of what happens, and there are times already in just 4.5 books or 3.5 books where I'm seeing people having glimpses into alternative realities or alternative threads through the universe, and it's cool. It's part of the fabric of that world, and I don't think it's overdone. I think it's done well.
Okay. And now let's just bring it back to more basic, simple questions. I'd love to get your impressions and thoughts on just some of the main guys. So just what do you have to say about, like, Matt so far? What do you think of Matt? Do you like him? Do you not like him? He's known for having a takeoff of personality after he wakes up in the White Tower. Like, because he has the dagger, he's constantly corrupted. It's hard. You don't really get to know Matt until, like, the beginning of book 3.
Well, one of the things that I do like about the characters, having pissed and moaned about the number and the fact that there was a Nynaeve and a Egwene and an Elaine, and those names sound too much the same at the same time to keep straight. Once you get to know them a little bit, they are wonderfully distinct. They have very different personalities, different skill sets. I'm thinking, okay, Matt, Perrin, Rand, these are the 3 guys, and how am I going to keep them straight? But by the time I was well into book 2, I'm thinking, wow, these are very different people with very different skills, very different concerns in life, and that's great. So Matt, I love the fact that he's got the whole blacksmith thing going on.
That's Perrin.
I'm sorry. Right, Perrin. Okay, so I'm sorry. See,
you're fine.
Then I'm angry that he took the axe out of the door.
Okay.
And because the axe was even heavier than his big hammer, even though it wasn't bigger than the hammer. And why in the world did he strap it back on again when he's got his hammer? I don't like that. Anyway, Max is this carefree, womanizing, And Robert Jordan seems uncomfortable with any talks about sex or anything like that, but he talks about a cuddle every now and then and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think you're supposed to elaborate
Yeah,
on your
yeah,
own as
yeah.
a reader.
But
yeah.
he's certainly not explicit about any of that. But yeah, he's the bon vivant, and it gets him into the right amount of trouble. So he's the guy that had the quarterstaff battle, right,
Yeah.
with Gallant and Gawain or whoever.
Galad and Gawain.
Yeah.
Yeah, talk about similar names. Gawain, Gawain, Galad, Elaine, and it starts to stack. They're all Andorran names. They're all from Andor. They're all supposed to sound, You'll notice
That's not a race. It's just a country. Got it. And when is it a country or a city? There's a distinction between a country and a city, even though some countries are cities.
But Caemlin's the capital of Andor is how it's supposed to go. But
I would have definitely flunked that part of today's quiz. Anyway, Matt being the carefree guy that was attacked by his playing cards, and the whole thing about his luck, it felt a little bit weird to me for a while that this is just going to be too much power, but no, now it's situational and there's more nuance to it than I appreciated at first, and that's been fun. And
it's written in plot armor. It's Robert Jordan addressed what plot armor is and was, there you go. I like that. It's very blunt.
Never heard that phrase before, but okay.
Yeah. It means you're integral to the plot. You can't die. It's plot armor. So he just took that and he made it Matt's power. And I appreciate that. But you flipped over and you were talking about Perrin's. You earlier mentioned Perrin having a cool power set, being a wolf brother and all that.
His eyes and the whole wolf thing. Again, I keep wishing he'd do more with it, but I'm glad he's not doing more with it because it means that there's more to come.
Yeah.
You want that instant gratification of, everybody's super powerful and everybody doing everything, but that just ruins the story. And so we've got that wolf guy that introduced him to the wolves and to his powers a little bit. I can't remember his name.
Elias Matura.
And he's kind of a Tom Bombadil kind of character to me. He's way in the background. He's been out there forever. He's hanging with the wolves. And I hope I see him again because I think he's really cool. But I like the way that he ran into Perrin and introduced him to some of the skills and the way the green eyes evolved and the way he sometimes protects people from them. And this girl whose name I can never pronounce, who's got a crush on him and is now manipulating him through the ways.
Fail.
Yeah, okay. How do you spell that?
You're asking me.
Okay.
Okay, let me take a shot.
Dyslexic speller here.
Yeah, Faille or maybe one O.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, how she hasn't gotten all this figured out yet, I don't know. Especially since I'm getting the impression that Moraine knows a lot more about her than I do, and she seems to have some powers that I haven't figured out yet. She should have Perrin figured out by now, but I'm sure I'll understand why later. But I like his character a lot.
Yeah, and the Aiel he was traveling with, I like that they. It seemed at first an odd choice to me to throw some Aiel along for his journey, but they're having the little couple spat and having Aiel next to them just kind of.
They're almost going to be 500 Aiel, then 1,000 Aiel, then 3.
I totally bought into that the first time I was reading it. Yeah. I was like, oh, Perrin's going to show up with an army.
Yeah.
No, he's not.
And I love the fact that they just run where everybody else is on horses, especially Loyal on his mega horse.
They're all just 6 foot tall gingers on the Aiel. They're just...
And Loyal, sorry to skip to Loyal, but... his relationship with his mom and being afraid that she's going to have a wife waiting for him, and most people are terrified that they even thought that this race still exists, and he's this bookworm guy that just wants to be recording what's going on, but you don't want to piss off an Ogier. That's pretty clear. Is it the mountains will fall if you piss off an Ogier, or is it as hard to piss off an Ogier as it is to have the mountains fall?
Yeah.
But that's an interesting, you don't want to mess with that question.
Yeah. Now pulling over to a fan favorite character and a favorite of mine, Moraine. How did you like her? She is the catalyst to introduce you to the world. She is the person who goes over all these things at the beginning. Did you like her character as being the exposition person?
I don't like her. I'm not supposed to like her. She is not above it all, but apart from so much of it. And right now she's pissed at her warder because he's off chasing some skirt. But I like the fact that at first, back in the Two Rivers, she seemed like this all-powerful super witch kind of person. And now we're learning that she's fighting political battles with the rest of the Aes Sedai. And I like that. I guess I'm okay with her relationship with Rand. I'm only 3.5 books in, so There's a long way to go yet, and I'm looking forward to that long way to go. But I like the fact that the way that she was first introduced, and the way that her character is maturing.
Okay. Yeah, there's a large portion of this is gonna be people enjoying the fact that you're only 3 books in, and they're gonna can't wait for Mark to find out this. I will be a filter for you in this comment section. I'll read it over the next day or so for you. There's so the next thing, and that leads me into my my next final big thing I wanted to ask you, and that is any predictions. What are your okay, I think this is going to happen. Your big, I caught on something, this might be foreshadowing, so I think this. Anything like that that's been...
Well, my biggest wish is that Amazon does an awesome job of bringing this to television, and it goes on for years and years and years, and I can't wait to see how they cast all these characters and the degree to which they bring the magic system to reality on the screen, and don't mess with the characters and the plot too much. It's got so much potential. I really, really hope it will be a Game of Thrones, except maybe even longer and better. I have heard, and I'm happy to hear, that it's not going to be I haven't read the Game of Thrones. I'm not all that interested in it even, because I don't like dark stuff. I like to have fun when I'm reading or watching TV or whatever.
Yeah, the reason I knew you'd like this is it has the right amount of camp for you, I feel like.
Anyway, so I've heard that not everybody's going to die, and I really like that. If I knew that by book 8 people are going to be dropping like flies and being replaced by new characters, I don't want to slog through a whole rebirth of everything and everybody. I want to follow at least most of these characters for a long time through this series. So I'm hoping that my understanding of that and that prediction comes true, because I'm really looking forward to following at least most of these people on for another 40-hour book and another 40-hour book and another 40-hour. Good Lord, these books are long. But not in a tedious way. I'm enjoying the fact that they're so long.
Yeah, it's a journey.
So I think that Rand is the coming of the Dragon Reborn and all that. I think that the amount of power that Egwene, Elaine, and Nynaeve all have is going to start to manifest itself in pretty amazing ways, I'm sure. I'm looking forward to Tom and Elaine's relationship going somewhere, I hope. I think that could really be cool. And then, wouldn't it be cool if Rand married Elaine and Tom is his father-in-law? Wow, that would be amazing. So fun stuff like that. I'm hoping to see some stuff like that.
Very cool. It's all a big giant web, a weaving wheel, all that. Yeah. There was one other thing. There was one other thing I wanted to ask you, but I can't think of it.
The one other thing that I'll ask you, though.
Sure.
So I'm trying to picture all these people and keep all these names straight and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just imagining what the names must be spelled like, because that will help me figure them out. Thanks for Falil or whatever her name is. Has somebody done a great job of illustrating these books? Because I'd love to see everybody's absolute favorite illustrations of what all these people and races look like.
So the original covers... A majority consensus is not great.
Seen them, don't like it.
Yeah, so I'm not going to say they're horrible. They have their charm, because there are fans out there. I'll be respectful of that. I think the newer illustrations look great. There's been, because Brandon finished it off around that time, a new cover series was released. They did a really good job. And there's a ton of fan art that goes off descriptions.
Yeah, but most fan art is garbage. Some of it's usually amazing. I don't want to have to sort through all the garbage to find the amazing.
Yeah. I would go... after this is over, I'll show you the new illustrations. They do a pretty good job.
Cover illustrations?
Yeah, the version 2. And I'm sure when the show comes out, there'll be a version 3, which will be even better. But yeah, there is definitive, this is how they look. I find my interpretations of characters to vary quite a bit. Yeah. I don't really know why. Especially when they just blatantly go against what Robert Jordan said, but that just happens. I remember when Lord of the Rings first came out, there was a lot of people saying Gollum looks nothing like how Gollum should look and all this, and Aragorn should be gruffer. I mean, that's going to happen. There's going to be people who are mad about that. I think that's absurd. I'm of the opinion that match the character description the best you can, but hire the actor who does the best job. That's my prerogative. I want good performances.
Well, and then there's makeup and costuming and all that kind of stuff, which can go back to what Robert Jordan explicitly said in the text. And that's one of the reasons I'm so looking forward to the TV show. I want to see these people come to life.
Yeah. There's been a recent controversy around casting where the Witcher series, I don't think you're familiar with at all.
I've heard you talk about it.
Yeah, the covers show a very gruff, and it's about a very gruff, down-to-earth guy, and they just cast the guy who plays Superman currently to play him, and everyone's just, I mean, he's a decent actor, but he's very pretty boy. He's not gruff by any imagination. So as long as they don't go, I'm willing to give that guy a chance, but as long as they don't go that far off course, I'm usually fine with it. I don't care about race typically. I mean, unless someone's explicitly, they are, you know, it's a part of their character for some reason, I don't mind. Okay. If you got, you know, Idris Elba for Lan, I don't care. He'd probably do a great job. That being said, there was that kind of, Lan is another fan favorite. Do you have any Lan predictions? Because he's a big boy. He's a big
I think he's going to end up with Nynaeve. I think that the tension now between him and Morgaine.
Morgaze.
Moraine is interesting. Moraine. So, yeah, wonderfully powerful. I hope he has a chance to teach Rand some more, because Rand is still doing his sword dances using things that were training exercises and doing pretty darn well with them. But I love any of those mentor-mentee stuff around the swordsmanship and that kind of stuff. Pardon my phone.
No worries.
So interesting character, powerful character. I'd love to see him doing more swordsman type stuff.
That's one of the few issues I have with Wheel of Time. The magic users are so powerful. Anytime someone's like, I'm a blade master, it's like, well, a low-level Aes Sedai could take you out. I mean, if they have any kind of distance, it's just, you know, Aes Sedai are some of the most powerful magic users in fantasy I've ever come across.
That's one of the things that I think a lot of people could learn from Dungeons and Dragons, because if you're a really good swordsman and you have a +5 Vorpal sword, then you're really amazing. So there's a combination of the skill, the class, and the magic laid on top of that. Where here, Rand certainly has a magic sword. His
Heron Rot, Power Rot blade, it cuts through armor like butter, I think they say. Yeah.
And then there's the sword that is not a sword, but really is a sword, but it's not a sword. That's kind of fun. But I think that, Lan needs some magic to go with his extreme skill. He needs some kind of a +2 bastard sword or something like that to make him even better, and put the fighters on more a par with some of the magic users.
Now, when I was at the point you are in the series, and they would describe, you know, Galad as being so amazingly good as a swordsman for...
Good looking, or as a sword? Okay.
Yeah, Robert Jordan liked Galad.
He's a cutie.
Yeah, but he's so good with a sword. But I never got the impression he could, like, take down Lan, because it's like there's good with the sword, like textbook. Which...
He can't take down a guy with a stick.
But I think that's the difference. Like, Galad... Robert, that's illustrating the point that Galad's good at textbook fighting. That's that. Lan is a good fighter, and there's a very great illustration there. Matt grew up tussling in the streets, so if someone's doing these textbook, I'm reposing in this form, of course Matt's gonna, okay, I win. I like that communication. I thought that scene did a really good job of setting up of, you know, character, and that's one of the beauties of this series is if you go back and you read it, you're going, oh, this is an illustration of Galad's good in one way.
And Galad's not that good yet where I am in the books, because
he's great for one of the trainees.
Who's in charge of his just said, I need to put him back out in the training yard for another few days and have him get beat up. That'll take his mind off of interfering in my business. So he's still very trainable.
Yeah. But he's the best of the trainees. He's the standout. And I can't believe I didn't ask about this. This is the thing I was thinking of earlier. In terms of Rand's madness and how that is being handled, that's one of the real standouts from this whole series to me, is this idea that your main character is he's potentially going insane.
I just don't buy that. I know they keep saying that, and I don't think he's going to go crazy. I see him getting more angry than he's ever been angry in his life before, and he has something to do when he does. But I don't think he's going to go too far down that slope, because it would just ruin the whole character and all that sort of stuff. So it's my fervent hope that although that is clearly a possibility that's laid out, that it's really not going to afflict him as much as it could. And one other character that we haven't talked about is the Queen, Elaine's mom.
Morgaze.
Yeah, I think she's going to have a much bigger part to play than she has so far. She was under the thumb of one of the shadows or something like that for a while, and now she's gotten free of that. But she's taught her daughter to be really subtle and smart about courts and countries and stuff like that. So she must be really sophisticated and smart. So I want some more of her.
She is there's intelligence levels in this series, and already you can just tell from her character build up on the higher end of that.
She's a smarty pants, yeah.
And people use their head in this series at times, and some people like Matt don't, and it still works out.
And they call it the game of houses that Tom apparently was so good at back when he was in her court. Well, when he and her were having an affair. So I just love the fact that intrigue is built in here, and everything is not brute force. There's subtleties and intrigues and that kind of thing.
If you want the House of Cards entertainment, you got that. If you want the Game of Thrones blood and battle, there's enough of that. There's diversity of entertainment here. If you want romance, there's romance. And
now in this book, we finally, for sure, found out that there's gay bisexual stuff going on in here too, which is cool.
I can't ask what was that.
They just spent 10 minutes in my world, I don't know how many pages, talking about Min and her relationship with a couple of other people and the way they relate to each other. He had some word for it, which I thought was kind of funny.
It was like pillow friends or something like that.
Yeah. So that really surprised me that it's in there, but it's in there, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, back in book 1, who always dressed like a guy, and who had the short hair, and who didn't wear makeup, and all this kind of stuff. And I'm not really good on foreshadowing. Everything always surprises me. I can be surprised by the same thing again and again.
Yeah, and what I liked about that is it's a little offhanded. It's not the defining characteristic. Right. It's this person happens to have that.
Right.
Something that's a little more subtle, I know for a fact has come up already. In the White Tower, a lot of the novices talk about how they have their pillow friends and stuff, and it took me until like my 4th reread and reading someone else talking about it going, oh!
Yeah.
Robert Jordan, I don't know if he just was uncomfortable with it, or he just didn't feel the need to go in depth. Same thing with violence. He'll say someone gets injured, but it's not like Game of Thrones where you spend a paragraph going over the injury. It's just he's been stabbed, he's been cut.
A couple days ago, there was this dead child being lifted into the air and having her heart beat and the blood oozing out through her chest wound while her heart's being made to beat and her eyes opening, and that was a little explicit.
Yeah, but that was a very big character moment. That was about it wasn't about blah blah. It wasn't about that. It was about Rand is doing something horrific because he just cannot accept the fact that he's failing.
Right, and Moiraine's saying you can't do that. But the other thing is, whenever Moiraine, is that the way?
Yeah, Moiraine.
Moiraine is doing something like that, I'm always thinking, but she's imperfect. Her knowledge is incomplete. She doesn't know, especially what he's capable of. So I'm always thinking, is he going to pull this off? And I like that there's not an omniscient person. Oh, well, if she says it, it must be true. No, she's always trying to deceive, and her knowledge is limited. So that's a cool part of the books.
When I first went through the series, trying to remember how I felt when I was 13 or 12, I think at the point you are 13, I felt a lot of fear around Rand. Like, I didn't know where he was going to go. I didn't know what his potential was. I didn't know what he was capable of. I didn't even know what he really wanted as a character at this point. It's interesting to have this guy who, he's thrust into the role of the chosen one trope, but he does not want to be there. He's very bulking at it, pushing back.
Well, I don't think he's balking at it now. I think he's kind of, okay, I'm going to tell these lords what to do. I'm going to treat the people better, and by the way, I know what my manifest destiny is, and I'm going to embrace that. I think he's given up, my perception, 3.5 books in.
I think what I was doing was more book 2.
Okay.
Yeah, and you're definitely at the point where he's decided, all right, I'm going to kick some ass.
I'm the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see him, and I think it's realistic to see someone go from this, no, I'm not going to do it, to, okay, my way or the highway.
Yeah.
He's just, okay, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, and everyone's going to go where I have to say.
And he hopes that he gets to do it before he goes completely crazy. I don't think he's going to go crazy, but... Yeah.
All right, that's about all the questions I had regarding Wheel of Time. Anything else you want to just say about the series? Anything else you think you want to express some passion about? Anything you really care about in terms of character or plot?
I'd love to get finished by the end of the year. That's my objective. Wow. This is mid-September. I've done 4 books in about 5... Well, I will have done 4 books in about 5 weeks. So I've got a shot that by the end of the holidays, if I completely give up my professional life and everything else and just forever, this is my background, I could finish this by the end of the year. We'll see.
I think you got it. I mean, you're already around a quarter of the way through. I mean, you got this. You can do it.
We'll see. Yeah. Thanks, though. This was fun.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode of WoTTalk.
Like and subscribe.
Yeah,
do the Patreon thing.
Like and subscribe already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support the channel. And have a good one, y'all. Peace.